Hi, welcome to Hometown Talk. I'm Sandy Britton. Tonight we're going to be discussing the reconsideration vote regarding the bond issue. As a result of the March district meeting, it was decided that we would reconsider the bond issue for the building project of the Timberlane Regional School District. I have tonight with me guests who are concerned citizens of the district, and we will be discussing this issue. I would also like to point out that any voter who has been registered late in February that was on the checklist for the March meeting will be eligible to vote at the April 9th meeting. You would have had to have registered and be eligible to vote and on the checklist at the March meeting. I'd like to now introduce my guest. I have Mr. Perry Zanakis. Welcome, Perry. He is retired. He lives in Plaistow, and he's also a substitute teacher occasionally throughout the district. We have Debbie McGoldrick. She's from Plaistow. She's a mother of 4, and she has 2 children at Pollard, and she's also a parent volunteer. Welcome. Darrell Britton. He's a local businessman. He lives in Plaistow, and he has an adult child who has graduated from the Timberlane district. Diane Sherman. She's from Atkinson. She has 3 children. She's a homemaker and a parent volunteer. George Haskins. He's from Atkinson. He's a school board member, currently chairing the school board. Congratulations, George.
Thank you.
He has 2 children who have graduated from Timberlane, and he is a corporate real estate director. Welcome. I guess we'd like to talk about the bond issue, the building project, what that means to the district. Darrell, care to start us off with a comment, question?
Well, I guess it'd be first a comment. One of the things that has been discussed over the years is new additions here and there, and where have you. I think that the plan that's been presented now is probably the best that we've seen in a long, long time. But I want to touch on something that I feel as though isn't touched upon an awful lot in a lot of circles. You hear a lot about, well, we need it for the kids, and we need it for, activities. And I have to look at it from a financial standpoint. I have a daughter that's out of the system now. I think we have to look at it from a financial standpoint, as a lot of people that are in the same position where they don't have kids in the system or they may be retired. And that position is that, one, construction costs. Construction costs bottomed out about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So they're on the upswing. We're catching it now on the upswing, and I think it's the time. If we let it go any further than this, then we're going to be in a position where we're going to be paying more for the same down the road. And we'd be only kidding ourselves if we thought for a minute that we're not going to need this in the future. So one is a pure financial cost and trying to keep taxes down in the future. The second would be when you look at the state's financial responsibilities towards the schools throughout the state, and Derry is a great example of that. They're not here to help us anymore. My greatest fear would be is that in the near future, the state financially, unless they do something, and I don't believe Merrill's administration or state legislators are moving to help the school systems in any way, to any massive extents. And I don't see anything bright on the horizon for extra money. We're in a position now where I believe we're going to get 50% matching funding, if that's correct. As the old saying goes, take it and run now, because we might not be able to take it and run later. So I think the combination of looking at all of that and hoping that this, in turn, will keep the taxes down in the long run. And we just can't look at the short run on this. I mean, people have to understand that we're in this for the long haul, and that if we put it off, it's going to cost more, and it's going to happen. You can sit back and say, we can do something else, or but nobody's come up with a viable plan, a secondary plan that really is logical and has a chance of working. There's been a lot of plans that have been half-baked and that just aren't going to happen. This is the plan that we need to see implemented. This is the time to do it financially, from both the state standpoint of money coming in and construction costs. And I think that this is the type of thing that people have to consider when they reconsider that vote. Don't look at the short term, but look at the long term.
Okay, George, would you like to comment on that? Are we getting 50% funding from the state, and what about the interest rates?
Our anticipation is, in fact, that we will get the 50% funding from the state. Darrell's point's well taken. We don't know what the future may hold. Right now, the state is providing that 50% funding. We expect it will continue. We want to take advantage of that, and obviously that saves us that amount of money on the principal cost of this project. And again, interest rates have shown some upward movement. Right now, we are still holding firm on the interest rates that we expect for the bond cost at 5%. That's another unknown that could add cost to this project in the future. So I think Darrell's point is very well taken, that if you don't choose to do this now, that the future only holds greater cost for us if we in fact have to do this project or some other project, which I firmly believe that, as Darrell does, it would be necessary. I think there's one other element of this project that hasn't been emphasized. It does have some financial impact on the district and the people who do not have children in the district. And we've chosen specifically not to focus on it because we want to focus on the children and the educational value of this project. But that other cost, or other value, if you will, is the value to the homes in this district. A solid educational system, I think we all agree, provides additional value to the homes that we have in this district. It's not something we focused on, but it is certainly an element that people should consider when trying to maintain the quality of education in our district.
Okay. Debbie, we're talking to you, and facilities at the gym at Pollard. A little scrunched?
Just a little bit. As a parent volunteer, of course, I've noticed a lot of things around the building. There are specialists holding their classes in the cellar. There is the enrichment program is being held on the stage, which is part of the gym. Anyone who's been to any function at the Pollard gym knows that the stage is not a secured area, for one thing. They also have no free periods in the gym, I understand from Myra Hogan. So there's always either a physical education class going on or the school lunch program being held. And here's poor Mrs. Sullivan trying to work on the stage, sometimes with large numbers of students. And she's dodging balls and dealing with constant noise problems too. So there's a definite crunch at the Pollard now. They're already over-enrolled. And as the mother of preschoolers, I'm really concerned with what's going to happen as they come through, and I have a real concern that my two older children who are going through the Pollard are going to receive a great quality of education, and if we don't get an addition to the Pollard, my children coming up are just not going to get the same education.
Okay. Perry, as a substitute teacher, what do you see in the schools?
Well, actually, everything that I see, I would like to say is positive. The children are doing well, the teachers are very dedicated, and everything is going well. But we do have a problem in the classrooms. There are many classrooms being used for purposes other than what they were intended for. And
Can you give us an example of this?
Well, in one case the other day I was substituting for a Spanish class, and I held one of the classes in the chemistry lab, which is an expensive facility that should be used for chemistry and science, and it had to be used for Spanish at this time, and also one of the math rooms. So it's in order for us to get full value, we must do something, and we must go on with this building program, because there's no question that we cannot afford at this time to be, how do they say, penny wise and pound foolish.
George, any comments to that? Teachers a la carte?
Well, I think the teachers a la carte is certainly an issue that I see that's very significant at the middle school. Putting teachers on the cart has a lot of drawbacks to it. One, the teacher that's on the cart has to take all of her, or his or her items that they teach with on that cart. It doesn't provide them the opportunity to call any place home where they can develop their teaching aids to the degree that other teachers can that have rooms. And that, I think that detracts something from the educational experience of the students that teacher has to serve. That a la carte only solves the problem on the short term, even if we chose to use that. On the long term, you eventually run out of rooms for everybody. And I think that's what we see, especially at the middle school portion of this problem, that we're running out of space for almost anything.
Okay. Diane, you get the great one, double sessions.
Oh, yes.
It's, oh no. When I first moved to town 2 years later, our school, the Timberlane district before the middle school, experienced double sessions. I know it affected me because I couldn't get my babysitter until after 5 o'clock. Have you had experience with double sessions?
Well, I grew up in an area where there were several schools in the area that did have double sessions. And, you know, you get to know people from, you know, other towns around you. And I remember how difficult it was to hook up with friends or even see people. And they would get home. Some of them weren't getting home until 6 or 7 at night. Sports programs, they weren't able to take part in extracurricular activities. And not that those are the focus of education, but they certainly augment your education. They're big benefits to the children who get to participate. Music programs suffered. There was a lot. And eventually, the schools built additions because it just got to the point where that wouldn't even solve the problem anymore. The coordination of, and just the parents realized at the end, or the people in their community realized that it's just not going to work, especially when you had 2 or 3 children and you try to accommodate 90% of the people, but those 10% fall through the crack and you have one child who's going to school at 1 hour of the day and another child at another hour of the day, and it's very hard to have a family life if you're, you know, dealing with these types of issues. So I think, you know, it's a bridge. You know, it may solve a problem for a little while, but eventually all these schools turn around and build or do something else. So if it was the end-all solution, you don't see a lot of schools sticking with it. So,
And I think one other thing that I think you've found statistically, that you lose the efficiency if you have someone going to school in the afternoon as opposed to going
especially
to school
small
in the
children,
morning.
they're more productive when you get up fresh in the day. If you have to go, you know, later in the day, what have they done all morning? You know what I mean? The chances are they're not going to be home sleeping there, and then you lose that homework hour and also other activities that your child may want to be involved with. You know, youth sports that are town-wide.
Sure. Daryl?
Yeah, I think there's one thing you want to take a look at also, again, taking even the children out of the picture. When you have a facility, it's not a structure that you can use and use and use and use and not have it wear, okay? You can't take a building and work it 8 hours a day and get the same wear on that building, obviously, that when you run it 16 hours a day. Sure, the superstructure doesn't know the difference, but heating costs are up, water usage is up, septic system usage is up, janitorial costs go up. All the associated costs with all of a sudden, instead of having 500 kids on a school, and let's say you even put 750 kids through that same school working a double session, it doesn't work out evenly. The costs expand even on a double session to the point where your facilities start deteriorating faster. Everything from school books to desks to everything that's associated with it. So that really, and that's one of the reasons why double sessions aren't successful for the most part. Outside of the fact that it doesn't work for teachers and everything else, it beats the heck out of the facilities. And facilities are very, very expensive when you have to replace the same thing rather than expanding and making a facility work for you.
Not only that, but you had mentioned, well, George had mentioned about property values, and it's going to look less attractive to a lot of people if you can send your children to school in a, you know, a regular school district where they have set hours, or if you get involved in a district that has the double sessions.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take, you know, a genius to figure out which school system is going to
I
hold the
don't
value.
think that anybody's going to beat the doors down to get into Derry right now. I mean, you know, you've got an unaccredited school now.
I mean, I moved out of Derry, so.
I mean, it's a very difficult situation all the way around.
Sure.
I think the point about the age of the buildings is an important factor too. When you go into a double session environment and you're doing it in buildings that on the average are over 20 years old, I think that's an important factor to consider. It's not like we have some new buildings that maybe could sustain some of that wear and tear, but it's doubly difficult for buildings with age of our facilities to sustain that and be efficient in their the utilization and the cost that you're speaking of in
Right.
terms of heating and so forth.
Could you clarify that, George? Are all our buildings that we're talking about with the building projects around 20 years age?
Actually, they're all older than that. I use 20 as a safe figure. I don't
Okay.
remember all of their precise ages, but there are pieces of the middle school that are younger than that. But the basic structure and the basic structure of the high school are all in the 20-plus range, and certainly Pollard is also. I mean, we've built additions that may not have that age on them, but as a whole, about 20-plus years.
Sure. Pollard, what about the portables? What happens to the great portables?
Well, you mean the permanent portables?
The temporary
The ones
permanent
that have only been
portables.
there for how many years? We intend in this plan to remove the portables and replace them with the new classrooms in the new addition. What will become of them, I have no guess at this moment. That would be a decision that the school board would have to make after we've made the decision to commit to this project. But they certainly would not be remaining on site and would not be utilized for classrooms at Pollard.
George, I have a question about the Pollard.
Mm-hmm.
Being the mother of a 4-year-old, and I do believe the numbers. I know how many preschoolers there are out there. I don't question for one moment that there are going to be 750 students in the Pollard by the time she gets in there. But it does concern me a little bit to send my preschooler, or to send my entry-level student into such a large school. Can you just explain to me a little bit how you've worked that into the plan? I know it was
Sure.
purposely designed for that.
It was a difficult decision, and we, during this process, involved the input of a lot of people, and Joanne Griffin was obviously included as one of those primary sources of information for
And
the Pollard.
she is the principal?
She's the principal of
Okay.
Pollard, as well as a lot of other administrators and teachers that were involved in this process, along with parents and everybody else. And it was very difficult for Joanne to come to grips with an elementary school of that size. And I think the way that we've been able to accept an elementary school of that size, and I think probably it would be helpful if I put this plan up of Pollard, is when you look at the plan and realize that we're adding the 16-room addition in this area, and we have the existing facility in this area, essentially what we're creating is two subgroups of students, or two separate schools, if you will, within the Pollard school, is the way that Joanne is looking at this. And each one would be in the approximate 350 plus or minus range in each of these areas, so that we can create the smallest school atmosphere, even though we are creating a facility that overall has a capacity of 750 plus or minus students.
Okay, so they'd
So
actually...
she's much more comfortable because of the way we've been able to lay out this facility and creating this core in between, which currently exists partially, but we are also creating a little bit here. And it really creates those two separate bodies of students, so that smallness, or the feeling of smallness, can remain, and I think that's very important at the elementary
One
level.
of the other things that I know any parent who's gone into the Pollard to pick up a child at pickup time can certainly identify with the fact that there isn't really a main area. There certainly isn't a sizable area anywhere, or a really safe area or safe way of getting the kids in and out of the building.
Well, that's something else that I think the plan is providing that I'm happy about, and I think that every parent with a student in this
I know I
school
will
will be
be.
happy about, is that this access that we're indicating here would be for buses only. And we now have a focused main entrance here, and with the office being in this area, some control over that area.
Okay.
So the bus traffic would come in here, and we've separated car traffic for drop-offs and other visitors on this side with additional parking. So it keeps those two types of traffic separate, and it does make a safer environment for the students being dropped off at the school.
'Cause it's a terrible crunch and more at pickup time than any other, but it's a
Right.
terrible crunch, and it's not a safe situation at all. That's great.
Okay, any comments on that? We're all happy with Pollard? George, talk has been as to this bond issue as being a total package. Comments?
Again, you're touching on some issues that we really struggled with as a facilities group. We worked, I think, since last May or so on the overall facilities plan. And throughout that discussion, it was how should it be presented, and what would we ultimately do to present this to the district. And we felt the group that participated, and there, as I said before, there were many, many people participating over several months in this process, came to the conclusion that the district had basically said, we want you to present a comprehensive plan that meets the needs of the district, which is what we believe we have developed. And to bring that forth and tell us what that need is, and we will then tell you whether or not we can fund it. That's essentially what we felt the charge for this group was. And that's what we did. We brought forth a comprehensive plan as a cohesive plan because there are several needs that we believe to be critical. Although we've given some priority in this process and said that the middle school was the foremost priority, Pollard second most pressing priority, and the high school being the third. We felt that they were all priorities, and there was an educational need that had to be met, and this was a comprehensive plan. We brought it forward that way. We did not believe then and do not believe now that it should be separated because all of these elements are necessary to support the educational needs of this district. So that's why we brought it forward as a comprehensive and cohesive plan under one bond issue.
Okay, now will this be presented on April 9th as the same bond issue that we saw in March?
Actually, I don't have the final answer to that question, and the reason I don't is because we have another school board meeting before that day. Up to this point, it has been the school board's wishes to continue with the plan as presented. That is always subject to discussion at any public school board meeting. So I have to reserve my final answer until the final school board meeting prior, but my expectation is that it will be brought forward in its current form, and that is what I hear currently is the wishes of the school board to do so.
Okay. Diane, are you seeing growth in the towns, in the classrooms, in the sizes?
Well, I mean, I'm in Atkinson. My son, it's not growing particularly in my own town, but I'm concerned about as I see the populace going into the middle school, and I'm looking ahead, and there are already children in the district that put us over and above, you know, the space capacity for that school. And so as I look ahead, and I look as my son is in second grade now, I'm concerned that there won't, you know, there won't be a seat for him at the school, or there won't be a seat in a structure that I feel is conducive to learning. I think that we have to have a facility that, you know, will meet the needs of all the students, and I am fortunate right now that our needs were met in Atkinson a few years back, but I look around the district, and we are part of a team here, and we have to meet the needs of everyone. And you have to look down the road. You can't be short-sighted and look at just where your child is now. You have to look at where they're going to be, and he's the first of my three, so I want to make sure that there's a facility there to meet their needs. And there is tremendous growth. George
Yes,
has
I know
pointed out.
George has some numbers, which I'll let you get, George, but I'll
Okay,
ask
go ahead.
Diane to comment on that.
I was just, Diane just touched on something when she
I'm
said
sorry, Debbie.
about being part of a team. One of the things that I like about the plan is the ability to bring the community, all four communities together in this sort of the new core, I'm going to call it the new core facility, the new gym, the new auditorium. There are a lot of wonderful things happening in the music program, for example, and the dramatic productions that are being put on. And I think that there's 600 or so children, I think, George, according to Tony.
That's about right.
I mean, that's a lot of kids that I think deserve a wonderful facility to do these things in. But not only for the kids, it's for the
families.
team, like you said, for the community. I look at this as a great opportunity to provide a sort of centralized location for our four towns to be able to get together and put on some things that are going to make us feel more of a good district,
Right.
district-wide things. not
And
just
so that they
our town.
have the ability to perform and not get snowed out on an up.
Right, and never rescheduled because
we
the
don't have
facilities are being used
right.
so often.
And why should one child be placed ahead of another in that respect? You know, I
That's
mean,
right.
it's just a real facilities crunch right
Well,
now.
Harry, yes, you
thank
have grandchildren. You can talk to this auditorium, I'm sure.
Well, I find it brings back so many memories, as Diane is talking, about the facilities where our oldest two boys went to Central Catholic because we didn't have any facilities here. They either had to go to Haverhill or Sanborn or Central. They went to Central. And then as the other two came along, we had Timberlane. And of course, I remember those days of building Timberlane. That this is deja vu, because we're going through the same thing as we went through the same thing with the middle school. And then while the two youngest were there, we experienced the double sessions. Okay. We experienced, unfortunately, the strike too, but still, all of these should bring the towns together. And this business of where we're at now, of contributing, and we have, as I see many of these children that have graduated from our schools are still in town. We have Diane Nye, who's on the school board, and she's one of our graduates. David Hansberry is in the town. My two children, my son and daughter, are still in town, and they're all contributing. So it's payback time for us retirees. I feel as though it's time that we paid back and we go on with the building. We cannot stop, because it's like climbing a ladder. You know, the minute you stop going up, you're going to go down. So we have to keep this program going on, and at this point, I think I better stop, because I could go on forever.
George, the auditorium.
Okay. Yeah, the auditorium, I guess, is something that people have a lot of questions about. And again, it was something in the plan that was developed by all of these people participating. It was felt that there was a definite need in the district for a facility that could provide the opportunities being described. We have no particular facility other than a 200 and some odd number seat lecture hall at the high school. As everybody knows, we use the gymnasium for all of the performances at the high school. The same thing at that or the cafeteria or at the middle school, and at the elementary schools it's in the general purpose rooms. Generally speaking, that's where the performances are held. Those are not appropriate facilities for those functions, but more than that, it provides, I think, focus, as is being said, for the community. And it's, again, something we haven't stressed in the prior presentations about this proposal. Because, again, we're stressing the educational benefits and the need educationally of this facilities plan. But there is a definite benefit, and we've tried to, at least in the preliminary planning, look at how can we make this the most useful facility from a community standpoint as well as an educational standpoint, providing the outside accesses and lobby areas and so forth for the auditorium and for the gymnasium at the middle school, because we look at those as full use, as well as the library areas. If we could make that access available, we at one time hope to make that more accessible. Those are all community facilities, not just school facilities. So we hope that people throughout the district will look at that and see the benefit to everyone. Picking up on one comment, if I may, I think it's very important for us to understand that we are a district. And we have provided a plan which does have elements that serve this entire district. And I think it's very important when we go to vote and we look at these things that we understand that we are all representatives of the greater need of this district. We represent people who have the ability to serve the children, be they in Atkinson, Danville, Sandown, or Plaistow, and regardless of where you happen to live. And we have a responsibility to do that. So I hope that everybody can see it that way and support the facility on that basis, that this is a district need.
Daryl, I know you spent some time in the middle school gym watching games. I'm sure you can attest to the fact that that could be enlarged a little bit, huh?
Well, I think, that, unfortunately, that was a case that when it was built, and that's a typical example of where dollars overtook, rational thinking. It was inexpensive to shrink it down, because originally the plan did call for bleachers and things in there.
And that is not a full-size gym, correct?
No,
Okay,
and unfortunately, what's the net result is you pretty much have a useless gym, okay, except for gym classes and things like that. But as far as girls and boys sports within that facility, where parents can come, and again, everybody can interact at a facility like that, it's useless. And if the thought had been put into it, we'd be looking at a gym now that's paid for and having a useful facility. So again, that's where you have to look on the long term and not the short term. The other thing is I think that it's important. I know after serving all those years in the Board of Selectmen that the towns don't interact. okay? And that is really, really important to get a core facility where we can start to get towns to interact. This district is a very big and very, very strong and influential district as a whole. As individuals, we're just small towns. And if we can find a way to pull all these people together and get us out of the, I want to say, them, we, they mode, I think that it'll benefit not only the district and the kids and everything else, but it'll help, you know, in every way, from the state on, you know, it's just, the benefits are enormous. But we have to get to the point where we have a place to get people together. And that's not the gym. I mean, it just isn't. You'll find that if you provide the right stadium or seating or whatever for people to get together, they will get together. Okay, I saw that growing up in a town like Andover. You know, you had a place where everybody got together, they showed up. Okay, when that wasn't available, nobody would go to a gym to listen to a speaker or a night out. Plus, I think the other side benefit to that auditorium is that it can be income bearing.
True.
And I think that
Dance schools.
anything.
Yeah.
I know the Lions Club occasionally in Plaistow, but I'm sure all the other Lions clubs would consider renting it for functions that they put on. I mean, it's just endless. Entertainers, lecturers, anything. You're providing a place now where it conceivably can be income bearing, as well as, not that we're going to make $1 million on it, but it certainly would defray some of the costs.
I think that's a very valid point. Again, one which we haven't stressed. It's a side issue, and it's an additional benefit that the facility provides. And it's interesting, I've spoken to a few people over at Salem High, and the comment that I received from several people was, just try to book our facility. It is so used. And
Same thing in
there's so
Philly.
much activity surrounding it that it's almost impossible to get on the schedule because it's booked every night. And that's what happens when you have a central facility that the communities can use. It becomes a focus for the community. And I think that's another important element.
They have the same situation at Methuen High School, I know, and that's where many of the local dance studios have gone for recitals. They have to go to Methuen, they're going to Lowell Auditorium. You know, they're really traveling some distance, and I think that's a shame because, you know, I hope that we're going to be able to offer that to the local dance schools in the future. Another thing that Daryl mentioned was about and Sandy did also, about the undersized gym at the middle school and being used for physical education classes. I understand from the principal that there are a lot of times over there where they have as many as 90 students with 3 teachers in that undersized facility, which is really, you know, not good for 2 classes, but it's certainly not good for 3 classes. And that was one of the other points on this plan that I thought was wonderful. And just, it went to show me how well the people work together to really try to utilize all the space in creating the mini gym. I think that was great. You know, you're getting another teaching facility without having to spend, you know, a lot of extra money or building another gym. I think that's great.
That might bear a little bit of explanation so the folks that aren't familiar with
Right.
that. If I could take a second and just show you to what Debbie is referring. On this plan, this is the plan of the middle school. This is the gymnasium area that we're developing. What we were able to do was extend that to a 3rd teaching station here. It's shown as a mini gym. In fact, it's an extension and a 3rd teaching station of the new gymnasium that we proposed. We were able to accomplish that because there's an elevation difference between these 2 schools, and we were able to kind of stick that underneath the area that would be extended to accommodate the stage area for the auditorium. So it was utilization essentially of an area that would be below that stage area, an area that otherwise might be underutilized. So it was an opportunity. We need 3 teaching stations for the middle school.
And you're
And it
going
was
to
an
need more.
opportunity to do it in a cost-effective way. So I think that would work out very well for the district, and certainly is very needed at the middle school.
Now, are the high school and the middle school connected?
They will
Teaching
be,
for-
physically they will be connected but separated. And actually I can show it better over on the plan on this easel. This is the high school, and this is the upper level of the facility that we proposed. And there's a corridor that would run down this length. To this point, it's high school.
Okay.
After that, it becomes middle school. This is a 2nd level classroom space for the middle school. But there is a physical separation here, a door that would, during the school day, be locked. Obviously, it would be accessible by some type of a fire device, bar or whatever, but it would be locked to the student access between those two
Okay,
schools.
so there'll be no interaction between high school
There would
students
be
and
absolutely
middle
no
school?
interaction during the school day between these two facilities.
Okay.
In addition, it's anticipated that somewhere in this music area, there's obviously going to be some type of office space or director's area, and there will be some presence there as well to control the movement through that corridor, but there is an actual physical separation at that point.
Okay. How does the building plan affect the libraries in the district?
Well, it affects all three schools, all three libraries. Each one of them will be expanded. We had a great debate over what we would do with the library spaces. And the librarians prevailed because they are very knowledgeable in their jobs and convinced us that the library should essentially remain where they are in the facilities, centrally located to each facility. So we're expanding them all in place in each of the schools. Each of them, and they vary in the size of the expansion to each, but each one of them is expanding something in the order of 30 to 40% in size to accommodate the increased student enrollments. Even with that, I think it's interesting and worthy to note that we will still not be at standards, at state standards for the library spaces. We are not now. And we certainly are nowhere near the American Library Association standards for those libraries. But we are increasing them and increasing their ability to serve the students.
Okay. Music and science labs.
Yes. There are some.
There are some? Will there be more?
Actually, at the middle school, I guess the answer is that there will be not more. We had anticipated adding an additional one at one point, but through some reworking of spaces, it's not necessary to add that much music space at the middle school. But yes, there will be additional music spaces. There will be additional science spaces at the high school and the middle school to accommodate those classrooms. As we all know, science classrooms dictate smaller class sizes because of some of the dangers involved in the experiments and so forth that are conducted there, so the teachers need control of fewer students in their classes, and we need to provide additional spaces so that we can safely and efficiently teach those students in the science facilities.
Now, will this solve all our teachers' a la carte problems? Will this eliminate?
For the term that this plan is intended to meet, it will. We will eliminate the a la carte problems entirely.
Okay.
Looking into the future, we have difficulty going beyond the 5 years and being absolutely certain of what the consequences of growth are beyond that. So it's hard to say, but this facility and this plan will eliminate that need.
Okay. Diane and I were talking about the capacity at the middle school. There's been some question of numbers being thrown out. 900 students, 750 students. Do you want to address that, Diane? I'm sorry, I keep calling you Diane. Debbie.
It's okay, so we have two Ds here.
Yeah.
My understanding, I had a very informative conversation with the principal at the middle school. And when the building was first built, it was built as a junior high. And I don't know, George, your children may have been around then, I don't know.
Actually, for 1 year, I think there was. Yeah.
Well, it was built as a junior high, and the teaching, and it was built with a capacity of 900 students. People kind of say, well, you've got the same building, how come it only has a capacity of 750 now? That doesn't seem to make sense. But the explanation for that is that we didn't back then have the same needs as far as special education and things that we had to do. We also had a different teaching style happening then. The kids were more in classes of lecture nature. And, it's been determined by our educators, and I don't think anybody will question the quality of our educators, that it's going to be much more successful and a much better learning experience for the kids to have more of a hands-on, smaller class size, a much different teaching style, and that is why the difference, the 750 as the current capacity. There's also, George had mentioned something about, talking about the separation of the buildings and talking about the beyond the 5 years that we're kind of talking. I kind of like that in the plan also because it allows for some flexibility. Should we find ourselves 7 or 8 years down the road with a large high school population and maybe needing to use some of those what are now designated middle school classrooms, can be very easily designated as high school classrooms in the future if the need arose. So I think that a lot of forethought has gone into allowing for flexibility in this program too. I think it's great.
That's another point that I appreciate being made. We did try to encompass some of the flexibility issues. It's difficult to be totally flexible,
Right.
but when looking at our existing facilities, our group consistently felt that we were not flexible at all in a lot of the facilities that we currently have. So that part of that problem that you identified, at least being able to shift between high school and middle school populations, if those population growths shift, is valuable to the district. It may prevent another addition a few years out that we don't anticipate. Not that I can be certain of that, but certainly that's the intent of some of that flexibility.
George, I'd like to talk about real numbers.
Real numbers, okay.
Real numbers for the population in the middle school. You had brought those up earlier.
Okay, in the middle school, the existing population, and then what's going to happen, is that basically?
Sure.
Okay.
What
Well, if I can,
relevant to.
because I don't want to try to remember these, I've written a few numbers down about the growth and what is driving the growth, and specifically at the middle school. And I think the easiest way to understand it, first of all, we have a current population of 797 students in the middle school. But when you look at the populations by grade, and you realize that we have an 8th grade class this year that will graduate, and these numbers, by the way, were based on September 15th numbers, so there may be some slight change, 1 or 2 students because of changes during the
Transfers,
year.
okay.
But as of that date, the 8th grade class was 246 students. Well, we're going to graduate 246 students from the middle school to the high school. But the 5th grade class coming in to the middle school is 303 students. So immediately, next year, we're going to look at 57 more students. And these are just students that are currently in our system. This doesn't account for anybody moving into the district or any of that. And then when you look at that progression and you look over the next couple of years, and you realize that then the next class, which is today's 7th grade class, graduates from the middle school, we graduate 274, but then we bring in another 5th grade of 298. So now there's an additional 24 at that next class. And then the next one, we graduate 277, and we bring in 311. And that's 34 more students. So each successive grade is bringing a higher population than those graduating from the middle school to the high school. And that happens at the high school as well. The transition of those students going into the high school, the grades graduating from the high school are smaller than those coming out of the middle school. So that's driving this growth in population. I've heard some conversations in the district about this one bubble at the 5th grade. Well, it's just not so. We have 303 students at the 5th grade. Then you drop back to the 4th grade, we have 298. And you drop back to the 3rd grade, and we have 311. So when you group together any 3 grades that would show up at the middle school over the next 5 years, you're looking at 1,000 or more students currently in the system, no matter how you add those numbers up. So that's what's doing it to us. We have these students, they're in our system, and we need to address the problem.
Right. And I think, too, if we looked at our town reports and just looked at the building permits taken out for homes, it's not in the minus column.
Right.
No.
And you know that
Right.
building homes has to bring kids into the district.
Well,
And we do have to educate them.
I think having some contact with the housing industry and the work that I do, and certainly in at least observing the housing industry, it's been held back for a long time in terms of real new construction. And from what I hear, the inventory of existing properties is pretty slim right now. So I see a lot of new homes that will be built in the future, whether they're built in this district or somewhere else. They're going to be built because the inventory out there is pretty much dried up, and somebody's going to need houses. And I think this district is ripe for that in some areas. So.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered a lot. Does anyone have anything else to add in regards to the building proposal?
Yeah.
Sure. Darryl?
How did you know that Darryl and I would say yeah?
Couple of comments. I think that anyone that doesn't think that this is going to hurt a little bit financially is kidding themselves, okay? There are going to be people that get up on the floor and say, well, geez, if you don't take your family to McDonald's one day a week, and you'll had saved enough to put this project through, okay? It's a lot of bunk, okay? The truth of the matter is nobody wants to give up that trip to McDonald's or anything else. And they'd like to have you know, if money was no object, everybody'd vote for the school. So obviously, it's more of a financial thing than anything else. So I think what people are going to have to do is dig down deep inside and say, hey, look, it's got to be done. There's no choice. We have to do it, whether it's now or later. We're going to have to pay for it. And I think that the time now is to pay for it. And like I said, it's not going to be easy for some. It's going to hurt. But I think that with anything that you gain, there's a little bit of pain in between. So I really urge people to, you know, look at this thing again on the long term, and hopefully you'll get out there and vote for it. I have every confidence in this project and the people that are administrating it. Anybody that knows me knows that back in the 80s when the project came forward, I was dead set against it. I did a TV show against it. I beat it to a stick wherever I could. So I'm not afraid to say, you know, the good or the bad when it comes. And I believe that these people have done their homework. The project is viable. Let's make it work.
I would like to add to that, because that is just beautiful, because I was in the same predicament. When we built the junior high, which is now the middle school, I was against it, because I felt small gym, electric heating, it just wasn't worth it. But now, hindsight, it was worth it. It has paid off. And I agree, whatever we get, we have to pay for it. We're not going to get anything for nothing. And as I look at the work that George and your people, you've done, it's just amazing. I would like you to tell us how long you spent on it after I get through expounding here that it's going to hurt. And as I say, if you stop and think, so it'll cost you, now I'm on a fixed income, so it costs me $50 a month more. Okay? Now that's a lot, $50, that's $600 a year. Hopefully it isn't going to come to that. But if it does, I'm certainly willing to pay that $50 to see the district, and I say the district, not the town of Plaistow, the district, grow as it has been growing, and to see the products of that district contributing. And as they do, they contribute totally. And again, I'm getting carried away. So we'll have.
I think I'd also like to speak to the fact that the group, I know, did put a lot of time in, and again, George can tell us exactly how much that was, but the other thing that I liked about the whole process, and I didn't come into the process until very late. This was all done when I started getting involved in this and finding out about it. But the thing that I like about it is that it did include anyone who wanted to be included. And that's, I think, the comment that I'd like to make to people is vote for this plan, because you're voting for continued, consistent quality for the education of our children. So vote for the plan. And if there's you know, some facet of the plan that you're not particularly happy with, I know George is more than anyone I've ever seen do anything like this, open to comments from people and open to input from people. So you can feel free to go out and vote on April 9th, vote yes for this building plan, and then speak to George or whoever is going to end up being the liaison for the rest of the planning. We've already lost time by having to go to this reconsideration. We've lost planning time to get this built, and I don't want to see us lose any more time. I want to see the people who want to be involved get involved, and they're very much invited to do so.
Well, just briefly, I just would like to add that this isn't just a vote for the children like we've added before. It's a vote for the community. And if we want to survive as a district and be a healthy, happy district, we better get out there and vote and consider this as just the only alternative that right now. It's been well thought out, well planned. Everything has come into consideration, and it really will tie us all together, and it will present new horizons for us all. So hopefully we'll see everybody there.
Great.
Well, George?
Well, first I appreciate the kind words about the openness of the process that we've conducted and your comments about the completeness. I feel that the group that I tried to lead through this did a lot of work and did those things. They were open to suggestion and comments, and they worked hard to come up with something that they felt really met the needs of the district. I don't know how much time we've spent on this, frankly. All I can tell you is that we're now something over 35 meetings since last May. So there's been a lot of time, but it's not just my time. There's a lot of people's time involved in this. Those meetings involved anywhere from 6 to 35 or 40 people at some of the forums and hearings. So a lot of people have been involved in this. There is one issue that I wanted to speak to that didn't get brought up, perhaps because it's been a recent question, and that's regarding how long a period of time we should bond for. We currently propose a 10-year bond, and that 10-year bond, as I said before, we can still achieve a 5% interest rate on it. And there are a couple of factors. There are some people I understand in the district who think that perhaps going longer may solve at least a short-term problem of how we pay for the expense of this project. For every 5 years that we go further on a bond issue, for instance, if we went to 15 years, we would first of all incur a slight rise in the interest rate automatically, because when you go to the bond market, further out you go, the more risk there is, so you have to pay a little bit more for your money. So that's one factor that would cost more. But because we're extending the time, as you would with your home mortgage, if you took a 20-year versus a 15-year, the total amount that you end up paying is significantly different. So for every 5 years that we go out further on this bond issue, it costs the district, in round figures, an additional $2 million in cost. And that's not something that the state shares in. That's interest costs, so the state does not share in that. So if we went to 15 years, there's an additional $2 million. If we went to 20, there's $2 million more, or $4 million more than we currently propose to spend on a 10-year issue. So it's not, in my opinion, a benefit to the district to do that. The other factor that comes into play if we do that is that we are planning this facility for 5 years out. If we took a bond that were 15 or 20 years long, we would still have 7, 8, 9, 10 or more years left to pay at the point at which we would be addressing whatever our needs are for the future. As it is right now, we're in the last, I believe, year and a half or 2 years of our last bond issue, so it's a lot less painful when you're there looking at the end of that and the beginning of a new bond issue than it is if you have 7 or 8 or more years ahead of you on an old bond issue. So I think that's another thing we have to think about in terms of any extension of the bond period.
Okay, great.
Thank you. And get out and vote.
He's right, we need to get out there and vote. The date is set for April 9th, the time's 9 o'clock. It's at the Timberlane Regional High School gym, and we hope to see you there. We need you to vote. This is Sandy Britton, Hometown Talk. I'd like to thank my guests, and hope you found the show informative. Good night. Okay, we can chat, but we can't move. You guys did good, very
Oh.
good, very
Oh, well,
good.
thank you. Of course, I was going to comment when you said the 2 Ds. They're both A's.
It was awful, and you're right, it's because I have 1, 2, 3 Ds all in a row, and I just look at this list and it's like, okay, going next. This went real well, very, very well. I was real pleased.
I've been prepping for what happens with the no vote. I'm glad you did bring that up.
Yeah,
That
you know
would have
what,
been-
we have 2 minutes beyond the hour. And I knew that we couldn't start with a no vote without more than 1 comment.
But I think it's very, very informative.